Water is the basis of life. And while wars are usually waged over land, resources and power, sometimes the absence of water will spark a conflict between nations. We already had plenty of water wars over the course of history. And with our overpopulated planet, climate change and resource mismanagement, the conditions have been established for the next big ones. Let's find out when and why these wars will happen and who will be involved. Welcome to Dark New World. Water scarcity has most often led to conflicts at local and regional levels. Because water is a vital element for life, human activities are always closely connected to availability and quality of water. In the past, access to fresh water sources defined the most important aspect for the locations of settlements that became later cities and capitals of the world. From London, Paris, Berlin to Istanbul, Baghdad and Beijing, the available water sources always defined policies and power projection capabilities. Without it, there can be no agriculture, transport or industry. Especially industrialized countries have immense water consumption. Factories and power plants cannot run without huge amounts of it. And with a higher living standard, people consume more meat. You need 20,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of beef. The manufacturing process of products and chemicals is also very water dependent. Almost everything we need and produce includes some form of water consumption in high amounts. The further advanced the industry of a country is, the higher the demand will be. Many third world countries are in the process of industrialization. These countries hold the majority of the worldwide population, and many of them are slowly demanding the same living standards as industrialized countries. And here comes the problem. Water is not found everywhere in the same capacity. There are many regions where population is growing fast and water supplies are running out. Let's look at dry regions without much sources of fresh water, where the demand cannot be handled anymore. The Middle East. For centuries, wars were fought over water in the region. Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon and Israel are all in competition. The absence of water makes the few rivers the most precious resources in the region, and soon one of the primary stress factors between nations. 1% of the world's freshwater is shared here, among 5% of the world's population. The Tigris-Euphrates river basin consists of its two primary rivers. Both the Tigris and Euphrates originate in southeastern Turkey. Both rivers cross Syria before heading into Iraq and into the Persian Gulf. In the 60s and 70s, Turkey built multiple dams to secure its own water needs, reducing the flow of water in both rivers by almost 50%. Syria, in reaction, built its own dam in the same time frame, which led to disputes with neighboring Iraq. Each year, less and less water is flowing downstream to Syria and Iraq, and meaningful agriculture and industry becomes more and more impossible. Especially Iraq has probably already reached a tipping point where agriculture is in the process of collapsing. The Iraqi marshlands constituted the largest wetland ecosystem in the Middle East. They are located in the lower parts of the Euphrates-Tigris basin in southern Iraq and consist of interconnected lakes, mudflats and wetlands. In the early 70s, the marshlands extended over 20,000 square kilometers of Iraq and Iran. Upstream construction of more than 30 dams diminished water flows, eliminated flood pulses and increased pollution concentrations. Yet, while dam construction reduced the amount of water reaching the marshes, their destruction is primarily due to intentional drainage during the 1990s for the purpose of drying out the area. These actions led to the systematic shrinkage of the marshlands. By the time the former Iraqi regime collapsed in 2003, over 90% of the area had dried out and turned into salt pans. Only 13% of the remaining residents in the marshlands have piped water supply, while 23% of the villages purchased their water from tankers, and 38% of villages obtained desalinated water from reverse osmosis units. More than 1/3 obtained their drinking water directly from the marshes without treatment, but the water is contaminated with pesticides, salts, untreated industrial discharge, and sewage from upstream. All in all, the water flow is getting weaker with every year. It's a matter of time when the water shortages will add fuel to the already unstable and suffering region. In a worst-case scenario, civil war or even a regional war between states is a real possibility. Further to the east, China and India are clashing in the Himalayas. The waters of the Himalayas are an invaluable resources for the two countries, as rapid economic development and population growth stress their water supplies. Among the rivers that cross their disputed border, the Brahmaputra River is the most significant water resource they share. Originating from Tibet, the Brahmaputra crosses the border into Arunachal Pradesh, which is occupied by India, but claimed by China as southern Tibet. In November 2020, China announced plans for hydropower constructions on the sections of the Brahmaputra closest to India, triggering strong responses from the Indian side. Of greatest concern to India are reports of Chinese plans to build a megadam just before the Brahmaputra enters India. News of these plans came at a time when relations between China and India are at a low point, with troops facing off at the Galvan Valley. There were also reports that in the aftermath of the border clashes, China has blocked the flow of the Galvan River, which crosses from the disputed Chinese-administered Askai-Chin region into the Ladakh region in India. Indian pundits have accused China of weaponizing water and using water for political and strategic leverage over India. They believe that China could cut off water or raise the water levels to flood India should a military conflict break out between them. With China's huge energy needs, Beijing and Delhi will continue to face off each other over the remaining water resources. Both sides will do everything to secure their needs, and a conflict will be unavoidable when no institutionalized mechanisms can be created. Unfortunately, we live in times where mechanisms and treaties like these gets abolished and destroyed. There are more big conflicts, like the better-known Renaissance dam dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia, or cases in which any action is already too late, like the dried-out Aral Lake. But all have fundamental characteristics in common: rising demands, uneven distribution and location of the water sources, and high tensions between state actors. The unsettling part is that the access to water is unnegotiable for states. In contrast to political disputes, leaders cannot back down and accept failure in negotiations and conflicts, which means that there is an increased risk of military escalation. With the situation getting worse in a lot of these hotspots, conflict seems unavoidable. The world is already preparing for conflict, and world leaders are occupied with conflicts between the great superpowers. But overlooking these problems could be a huge mistake. Only time will tell if we can resolve our problems peacefully. Until then, every drop will count. Okay, full stop. This is a new YouTube channel, and if you're interested in the state of the world that we're in, with all the potential conflicts flaring up, then please subscribe and like the video. For a small channel like mine, every subscription and like counts, and actually makes a huge difference. My name is Dennis. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.